Let's see if we can get this guy finished. I've got some gray in here on my palette. I got a slate gray, and then I added some dark into it to make it a little bit darker. And what we're going to want to do is color him gray. I want the hair to come out pretty gray. Do the same thing with his eyebrow. Keep flipping that around and losing control of it. Sorry about that. Okay, I like that gray. We're just going to highlight it. All right. Dry it. Like we did on the last fella, we want to take a little bit of this buttermilk and highlight that hair. So we'll dip a little bit in there, just like we did the last time. We'll charge up the brush by making sure it has adequate coverage in there. And all we're going to do is highlight it. Highlighting, I mean we're just going across we're not trying to get it down into the grooves. We're just highlighting it by pulling it across, perpendicular to all the cuts. Got him. I think he looks good. Essentially, this guy is finished painting, but we're not finished with him because we want to include some things that we want to do on him. We've got the skin has all kind of blended into one color. So what we want to do is try to give some highlights. So I'm going to go back into my original paint that I had. I had dark flesh here. I'm going to pull a little bit of this up here. I'm going to go into my potato red and just give it a little bit of a color. Okay, I want to water that down quite a bit. And then add just a little bit to offset that very redness to it. And all I want to do is highlight some areas. And that's not probably going to be enough, but you know what? It works. Looks alright. We'll add one more little piece at the end and just have a little bit of fun with that at the end. And just randomly adding some few streaks in there to make it look like its skin is not all one color. Okay, let me dry that real quickly. And just a little bit more underneath his chin. I think we might have missed that one altogether. Got the wrong size brush for this. and then we'll dry them. All right, let's finish with this fella. Trick I learned from a friend of mine was to add some pastel to him. So what we're going to do is going to take this guy, I'm going to take a real stiff brush, and I want to get some of this, I don't know, pastel chalk, all of these different colors. I want it charged up on my brush. It's a dry brush, so it's not sticking a lot. And then I just want to highlight some areas. And what it's going to do is allow me to show up in some areas what may look like blood vessels. So you see some of those people that look like they have color to their face, or they just have a little bit in one area than the other. Ruddy faced, I think, is what I heard one artist call it. Now remember, this is chalk dust. If you get too much on there, it's easy to wipe off. You just get your brush wet or a rag wet, it comes right off. But when you put a little dab of it on there, it brings out some of these highlights right in here where you might want some. And this thing here, I couldn't even tell you where I got this thing, but I've had it for a dozen years. And I have been using it, and you can see how little of it's gone away. But you can do this over and over. I know I've done this when I wanted to have a cowboy. It looks like he's tied one on the night before. Put it on his eyeballs, and it just gets a little bit of that red to the white of the eyeball and gives it a nice little color to it. And you can see some of those highlights right here. Okay. Again, we'll do the matte varnish to him. Get him cleaned up. This is going to keep the paint from fading, so whatever's on there when you put this on there is on there. It's going to stay. This makes it a little bit darker until it dries out, but it also lets us see what it's going to look like, and before we put a finish on it, we can go back and we can add whatever we need to. Gives me an idea what it's going to look like. We'll dry it off. And there he is. And after it's completely dry, you can see some of the highlights showing up. Some of the light parts are showing up, and some of them are just